So Nicholas Bonolis, again of Capital Inc. I'd like to welcome you all to the second panel of today's forum, our Decarbonization Forum. And I have the pleasure of introducing you to a terrific group of panelists who are going to tackle one of the most immediate, I would say, and critical topics of the industry, the complexities around CII and the SEEMP 3. So without any further delay, I will turn over the floor to Douglas Raitt, who from Lloyd's Register. He's a regional advisory service manager, and Douglas is going to introduce our esteemed panelists. I'd like to thank you all for joining us and making this panel a great success. Thank you very much. Douglas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. I'm delighted to be the moderator of this panel, and as you rightfully pointed out, the Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan Part 3 is one of the pressing issues that ship owner operators will have to crack on with before the end of the year. So I work for Lloyd's Register, and I'm joined by a very esteemed panel, as Nicholas already mentioned. So in no order of particular importance, we have with us Captain Sachi Atmalingam, Global Director, CHSSE and Sustainability, Mr. Marco Fiori, CEO, Premuda, and Theo Baltatis, General Manager, Technomar Shipping, Michael Lavidas, Managing Director, Pantheon Tankers Management Limited, and last but not least, Lucas Barmparis, President of Safe Bulkers. Before we head into the webinar proper, I think it might be interesting to set the stage for people listening and watching this webinar who may not necessarily be fully aware of what SEEMP 3 and carbon intensity indicators is all about. So I'll just give a quick summary, and then we'll head to the Q&A with the panelists, which I'm sure will be very, very excited. So IMO introduced the Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan Part 3, mainly to ensure that the shipping industry has a strategic tool to meet and maintain and improve carbon intensity in the short term. The plan is very much designed to articulate a 3-year strategy, 23, 24, 25, where ship operators will plot their carbon intensity based on previous IMO DCS data and execute a plan within the SEEMP that will allow for the application of energy efficiency measures to maintain pace with a downward trajectory of CII reduction factors. In 2023, data will be collected through the IMO data collection scheme, which will result eventually in the first year of all ships globally greater than 5,000 GT to be assigned a rating, an annual efficiency rating. And basically ships will be categorized in category A, B, C, D, and E, and a rating of A, B, and C being acceptable, a rating and D and E being non-compliant. So if vessels operate at a D or an E rating, the Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan will then have to be updated with a corrective action plan that will allow the ship operator to demonstrate how they're going to improve the D rating to a C rating or better over a period of 3 years. And for an E-rated vessel, it would have to be done within a 12-month period. So that's kind of in a nutshell the SEEMP regulations and the carbon intensity reduction factors that we will see play out in the next few years. And let's now turn to the panel and ask the question: what will the implications be for shipping, and how do you see it play out? And perhaps maybe I can start with Michael and ask the very straightforward question to get the panel going. And that is really, why have the CII and AER measures been introduced to shipping? Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Douglas. And I would say not much more than you already said, that the objective there is for the owners, managers, and operators to be facilitated in their strive for compliance with the required CII rating, which, as you mentioned, is in a band of starting from E. Actually, worst is the E and the best is A, and C is the middle line of the C band is actually the required. So this is in order to, in a structured way, be able for us, the ship operators, ship managers, comply with the IMO set standards for reducing mainly in the medium term the carbon intensity by 40% by 2030, and then in the longer term by 70% by 2050. And I may even add that there is even a long-term and even much longer-term objective to reduce it to reduce the carbon emissions by 50% in 2100, which actually this is a long way to go. In other words, all of us, we need some help, and this is a way to do it in a structured way by applying the CII and SEEMP Part III.
Thank you very much, Michael. That's very, very clear. I'm also kind of glad that you articulate very much that this is a very useful tool for shipping to do its part in reducing carbon intensity. So maybe Captain Sachi, as an esteemed member of the shipping community working for AE Tankers, how do you work with SEEMP 3 in your organization, if I may ask?
Thank you. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Yeah, Douglas, such an important question. And Michael, you said quite a bit of what that whole summary is all about. Well, for us, in a simple way, is that think big, start now, do it in phases. So I think SEEMP 3 falls in, if you go back, actually SEEMP 1, 2 came in earlier, gave quite a bit of direction to the shipping industry, ship owners, how to operate going forward, getting things that they weren't there before, you know, the mathematics behind it, the tracking of it. So SEEMP 3 basically upped the game by getting ship owners to commit. There is no wait and see anymore. Come 1st January 2023, game is on. So what we are doing is that firstly, you got to have a team, a small team that's conversant with these regulations. It is not just going to happen. There's going to be active involvement of the ship owners and the ship managers, even the crew on board need to be very clear as to what is expected from them. And you know, one of the things we need to remember out of shipping is that every minute, every hour, every day, 365 days, every ship emits. And you got to get it right. And by reporting, and I think Michael and yourself, Douglas, have given what this is all about, what's going to happen. For ourselves, we have actually lined up all our ships, looked at where they stand. There will be ships affected. The older ones, especially the pre-EEDI, and the nature and the profile of their business will be affected due to how the categorization takes place. Then you got to look at, firstly, operationally, what you can do. The crew, the ship manager, the ship owner, the commercial operations team got to come around and make sure you know that every action that you're going to impose on the ship will have certain results, and make sure your results are well optimized, and over 365 days you get the result that you want. But failing which, you're going to be dropping the ship down. There's going to be a lot more risk. Now, the other part is that knowing that where your ship are, you'll be extremely happy if your ship is sitting higher than sea, But when you get down to lower ends, you know that you are really putting yourself in the rabbit hole without any actions. So you need to look at potential capitals that you go to CAPEX, you have to put aside. You got to assign actions that you want, start talking to your RO, your class, start talking to solutions that's available, and put every ship need to have a plan, every ship. And I think as Michael would say, this is just a start. I don't think post 2026 is going to get any easier. So think big. Thank you.
Yeah. That's excellent, Captain Sachi. I think from our experience with LR, when we started talking about SEEMP 3 quite a while ago now, a lot of owner operators were underestimating the challenge of SEEMP 3, right? Where SEEMP Part 1 and SEEMP Part 2 were considered paper exercises. This one is actually having to have a lot more detail, a lot more responsibility, and a lot more strategic planning. And it's dynamic because each year you have to review it based on your previous year's IMO DCS data. So thank you very much for providing that question. Now I have a question that will concern all panelists. And what is the impact of the CII AER requirements on shipping? And recognizing that I have a few very good, excellent industry professionals here managing different ships, can you add some color to where you feel your fleet might be challenged by the ever stringent reduction criteria of carbon intensity in the years ahead? And perhaps Theo, I can start with you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Douglas. It's really nice joining this panel. And of course, Michael and Captain Sachi gave quite a color to the conversation. Allow me to add a little bit more, saying that, of course, everything started back in 2018 when IMO established the greenhouse gas policy, of course, after a lot of political pressure on shipping. I have to say, with the experience going over for the last few years regarding the new regulations and coming up with Part 3, SEEMP Part 3, which is, of course, it is the result of Part 1, Part 2, and let's say the direction that was given by IMO back in 2018. I have to say that what broadly is realized that all of us are in the same boat, and I'm talking about owners, managers, charterers, and other stakeholders, that brings us together, trying to have a more efficient operational of the international fleet, because definitely we do pollute. Of course, the targets set earlier on are quite ambitious, I have to say. And coming back to what is going to be the effect on our fleet, I have to say that for sure, it's going to be quite dramatic regarding the old type of vessels. We are operating mainly nearly 100 vessels, 75 of them are containers, and 25 are bulk carriers. Of course, I have no particular experience on tankers, so I'm quite sure that somebody is going to highlight that. The tremendous pressure is coming mainly from container vessels. Charterers, which are major charterers, they are a little bit skeptical about how they are going to move in 2023. And this is, of course, that brings us together. And start discussing ESDs, start discussing operational parameters that at the end of 2023, we're going to have a substantial improvement of past performance, I would say, together. And I have to say that it is something new in our community, that the closer we can see our charterers and customers are this year, 2022. Of course, also we have to create a performance project department that was from a couple of people end up to be 10 people now. because we want to be on top of the situation, on regulations, on implementation of ESDs, and whatever comes next. So I think that at the end of the day, it's going to be to the benefit of the industry. And of course, the targets of IMO are very well respected. And if we cannot maintain the target, any ship that cannot maintain the target, it has to be scrapped.
Thank you very much, Theo. That's a very, very comprehensive answer there. So maybe moving on to perhaps Marco Fiori, can you perhaps share some views from your perspective?
Yeah, you know, as Theo was saying, you know, this became very much a hot topic in our industry, and from few people we started having a lot of people looking into it. My personal take of the whole thing is that more than how ships are built, there's going to be also a lot of emphasis how ships are utilized, because they're kind of an efficiency index. So I think that's going to be a very important thing, and that will have impact also on TC contracts, for example, capacity of being able to slow down speed if certain goals are not reached. So we'll have a kind of a broad impact. We have been focusing very much on the aspect of how to utilize ships, because it is very much based on consumption and distance, all of this. And the distance is also a very important thing, and also also the consumption. So in theory, just to make from what I understand, if you have a ship all the time idle in port, probably it's going to have a much worse index of a ship that's moving cargo around the world, because it's staying still and it's just moving, and it's just not moving and just creating CO2. So it is very much something that is going to impact how we're going to move ships around the world. Naturally, there's going to be an impact on the new generation of ships, but this is such a broad topic and it's open. There are at least 4 or 5 systems that everybody's looking at. There is methanol, there is ammonia. So it is really far-fetched solution on that front. I think that going forward, if we want to create some really stable environment going forward, it will have to be on the fact of also choosing kind of quickly, deciding which direction we should be going on the future bunker of the world, because this is impacting enormously new buildings. Today, as we speak, probably the best solution you can have is buying a modern super eco ships, because this is still the best solution you have on available. But I think we'll have to find new solutions for this. But what is very important is that we have on this carbon index, intensity index on the CII, it is also how you utilize your ships, not only what kind of ships you have. And that, I think, is something everybody will have to take into account.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marco. I think the emphasis on operational measures, right, which you're alluding to, can go a long way, right, to influence the carbon intensity of a ship. So moving on, perhaps Lucas, you care to share some of your perspective, please?
Yes, thank you for asking me. I mean, in Safe Bulkers, we have adopted a quite pragmatic approach, noting all the parameters that we have. CII is a reality, the carbon intensity index, as well as the reduction of it gradually. And what we expect also is that there will be an additional reduction after 2026, which could be maybe not by 2% every year as the assumption is today. It could be 3 or 4% each year, which will bring a greater push on the performance of the vessels. And of course, we all know that one option to reduce or to control the CII is the operation. And we have noted that maybe even good ships can have a reduced CII if they stay long in somewhere in a port because of any reason. And this is not corrected. Of course, you can do several things in order to improve the operation with, let's say, with hard measures, and such hard measures are maybe low friction paints, or maybe some ducts or fins, etc., etc. So there are things that you can do and improve the CII. Maybe I would say substantially, let's say by 10 to 15%. There are also other, I mean, we also have a very substantial renewal program in SEEMP Bulkers. So we are acquiring, I mean, we have ordered in total 11 phase 3 ships, which can compete easily, at least, let's say, for the following, say, 10 years or more, with these new regulations, noting that most of the fleet, about maybe 85% of the fleet, is not even a phase 1. Maybe it is phase 0 or higher. So we are going towards a period after, let's say, 2026, where I believe that there will be the most pressure will be exercised to the ship owners, that will be in a position to compete, having, let's say, a younger and more efficient fleet with these investments. I believe that also that there will be probably a selection between charterers of ships that will perform better, and even ports. I mean, you have, let's say, a category E ship or category ED ship, you may not be even able to go to certain ports after 2026. So I think that there is quite a pressure, a big pressure will be exercised. It's a nice game. You need to have a very educated technical departments to do monitoring very close. So I would say that we need to see measures implementing, which we do in all our dry dockings. We implement energy efficiency measures, and also to be focused on our operational characteristics. I mean, I say bulkers, we have done also the last part. We have selected and invested in phase 3. Now, a part of that, after 2026, I think that the solution is a selection, as someone said before, a selection of the new fuel, because without better fuels, we cannot really go forever, especially in older ships. Thank you.
Yeah, I find it fascinating, Lucas, and I think the previous speakers alluded to that as well, right? There's only so far we can work on efficiency. Eventually, the game will be up, right? And the industry will have to embrace lower to zero carbon fuels if we are to succeed in meeting the IMO, stated decarbonization goals. Captain Sachi, would you also like to opine about what the impact is, and perhaps maybe focus a little bit more on the tanker and perhaps gas carrier segment?
Right. No, thank you. I think probably one of the misconceptions about shipping is that people think that we have ship owners, therefore we have this control over everything. Shipping is really a service industry in much of it, and especially for tankers. Our role in the value chain is quite limited, carrying the cargo over, and therefore these regulations that's coming in will need to have partnership. Yeah, from a owner's perspective, generically, you have an investment risk. If you're going to upgrade, how are you going to find your capex, and you have a technical risk, as what has been spoken about. And all the external components, like you may choose to move towards certain types of fuels, and you might end up having this fuel becoming a lot more expensive than what you have planned. So all these risks come about. But from a tanker perspective, I think the owners are clear. I think we are talking to the industry. We're very clear. But one of the position AET has taken much earlier than this is that we did see fuel being the game changer, because like you said, Douglas, designs and operations it has to plateau somewhere, but you're not going to get your journey continued from there. So we have invested in likes of the LNG dual fuel ships way back in 2017. We have recently committed to going into ammonia fuel for looking at zero emission vessels going forward. And and to my earlier statement, you can't do it in vacuum. We have to have partners coming in, we have to have customers coming in, and most importantly, in today's discussion, the financiers have to come in. And without the financiers taking this, becoming a stage actor early and recognizing good ship owners to take position, very little things going to accelerate from here on. Yeah, so that's our view. And but as an owner here, and like what all the other owners have said here, is that we are fully committed. The industry is committed to move forward, but the regulations is sitting on ship owners' shoulder. But ship owner alone will not be able to carry this responsibility going forward. Yeah, that's the point. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Captain Sachi, right? It is not a single stakeholder challenge, right? It's a multi-stakeholder challenge. Everybody who plays into the maritime sector and has a stake into it, be it technology providers, be it infrastructure providers, fuel producers, financiers, yards, everybody is impacted, and together we need to find solutions and get to a successful journey that allows us to achieve the IMO stated ambitions. Michael, perhaps you would like to opine as last of the crew here on this particular question.
Yes, Douglas, I'll be happy to. Of course, we are running in our group both dry cargo vessels, bulk carriers, tankers to the larger extent, and LNG carriers. So from this point of view, I agree with what both Lucas and Sachi, unfortunately not containers, Captain Sachi has mentioned. Definitely, the landscape in the tanker side is more demanding than other segments. The charterers are major in can be major oil majors or major oil traders. The demands are there, and to tell you frankly, we wouldn't expect to get a mandatory IMO regulation in order to make our ships more efficient. We do it regularly, and we are trying our best. The difference is that now we have a benchmark that we are to compare with. Previously, the benchmarking was done primarily by our charterers, or sometimes even by our second-hand buyers, because 80% of our fleet is built to our specification, and only the rest of 20% is bought second-hand. So when we sell our ships, you can see the difference. But what I want to say is efficiency can be and emission reduction or carbon reduction, because emissions is not only carbon, of course, can be reached or achieved by different means. One, of course, is the new ships, the new buildings. I would say this is the sure bet. Because don't forget that when you order a ship now, I think Captain Sachi mentioned something, or Lucas before, compared to a 15-year-old vessel, the optimized hull, the low friction or the low friction paint and defouling, or even the air lubrication system, shaft generation, energy saving devices, and all other aspects can easily reduce the emissions by 30%. So in order to give you a benchmarking, 30% is higher than having the same ship that we have now in the water burning LNG, which is only 22 or 21. And mind you that this way we can achieve, because we built the new ships, to reduce the emissions all the time. Because when you build a dual fuel ship, with all my respect to Captain Sachi, you have the option of using the lower carbon fuel on board. And nowadays, for example, most of the owners or operators or even charterers demand that we are using liquid fuel oil, because the LNG is hugely expensive. So you understand, the end result is that the emissions are not reduced. So that is a safe bet, to have modern, up-to-date new ships. That's absolutely our recipe. The second one, of course, is what you said, is to look into low carbon or carbon-free fuels for those new ships. Our favorite, in addition to the LNG, which is definitely medium term, reach, for example, another 10 years or 15 maybe as an option of dual fuel, is ammonia. The only bad thing with ammonia is that there are no engines yet built, and to the best of our knowledge, the engine makers that promise to have developed the engines, they say for 2024, but these are all very small engines that they wouldn't do the job. We will need much bigger engines, and of course, not to mention the storage tanks that we will need for ammonia, because the energy concentration of ammonia compared to other fuel options is very low, so you need huge tanks. To tell you frankly, technology has to help us, and when we talk for new technology and the huge capex that is needed there, I would agree again with my fellow panel members that we need the help of everybody. First of all, of our charterers, that they want to show themselves that they have a long-term strategy by preferring to charter the new ships with carbon-free or low-carbon fuel options. And of course, the financiers. We have the Poseidon Principle, and we have other, let's say, initiatives that they have also to look into. ESG, for example, is a part of it, and so that they facilitate our efforts. In a nutshell, in my opinion, even though the 2030 is not far away from us, I think with relatively conventional measures, most of us, at least our group, we can reach without a major burden, not at all. After that, which is between shorter term to long term, yes, we need a lot of options which are not there yet. It may be, some people say hydrogen, that is far away from us. Some people say methanol is closer, but definitely we don't know the recipe yet. And mind you, that there are now discussions in IMO and in all industry for reducing the target for 2050 being zero carbon emissions, not 50% of the previous, of 2008. So this will, which the decision, if I'm not mistaken, will be taken sometime next year by the next MEPC meeting. Is that right, Douglas?
I'm not particularly aware if that's the case,
Okay.
but it's certainly in discussions.
In the MEPC 80, I think next year it will be taken.
Right. That is actually
yes,
already written in the minutes, but of course may delay, but definitely by 2026 we will know. So in that case, the 2% that you mentioned, Lucas, will be for sure at least 4%. So tell you frankly, 4% reduction every year. So what I want to say is we cannot complain that we don't have challenges in front of us.
If I may intervene and say, I mean, agreeing with Michael here, I would say that initially the LNG, the dual fuel LNG, could be, I mean, could have been a good solution, because you say, I mean, I have a phase 3 vessel, 30%, and I have also, I'm using LNG 18% more. So, I mean, it should be a very good vessel. Nowadays, first of all, if you go to well to wake, I mean, there's a disaster. The second point is that itself, the LNG has a huge cost. Dual fuel LNG has a huge cost. And if you add up the cost of the LNG nowadays, it's a disaster. we have to move very quickly to new fuels, because the modern vessels of today, let's say the phase 3 vessels, the phase 2 vessels, I mean, the phase 1 even vessels, I mean, with some additions would be good, but we need to select the final fuel, which will be where we will invest, and we'll be able to, through maybe pilot projects, to have the ability to implement. Also, not to mention the worst part of the equation, which even whatever we say, ammonia or methanol or any kind of fuel, right now all these fuels are not green or blue, they are completely gray or black, because they are produced from and they may have higher emissions than the ordinary fuels that we are using. And the last comment that I want to mention, because if financiers are listening, the incentives that financiers are giving are very marginal, or I don't know. I would say that you should agree on that. There is nothing really substantial on financing. We speak about Poseidon principles to achieve certain goals, but even if you achieve these goals, the benefit is marginal, so it doesn't make any actual sense. So only through funds that can be created and can transfer the benefit from the non-polluting vessels or the non-emitting CO2 vessels, because CO2 is not a pollution, to the benefit from, let's say, from the heavy CO2 emitting vessels to the new generation vessels. Only in such a way this will be beneficial and will improve and will push the implementation of the new technology, the new fuels.
Sorry, I just wanted to add something. I think that sometimes when I hear all these discussions, I think that we're losing a little bit the global picture. We're losing a little bit of practicality about the whole thing. We're just seeing one small moving part of a very complex machine. We can solve also the problem with new fuels and ships and everything, but the whole system, logistics systems of the world, has to be overhauled. So we need to have fueling and bunkering points for the new fuel in every port of the world. And if we talk about ammonia, they have to be refrigerated. But I don't think that sometimes people realizes the scope and the dimension of rechanging the whole logistical system of the world in order to allow ships being able to fuel in any part of the world. I think we're just one little piece about the whole thing, but there is a huge part that I think is not even being considered. I don't hear about the investment foreseen for creating storage tanks for methanol or ammonia in every port of the world where normally ships would be going. I haven't heard a lot about that debate. And we can have the most modern ships, like today, you know, who are ships with scrubbers. They can't use heavy sulfur fuel in South America because there's no heavy sulfur fuel there. So it's of no use what they've been installing on the ships. So I think it's a global job that we're losing the dimension about how enormous it is, and the financial cost of all of this is going to be entailing.
Fascinating how many, agreeable voices there are, right? Because we all understand the challenge of the complexities of how to marry up the demand and the supply side and get the overall infrastructure below that right in order for shipping to get the fuel that they need, and for suppliers to have the security of the demand that they need, right? So it's very much a kind of a chicken and an egg situation, which we kind of found ourselves more than a decade ago when we discussed LNG as a fuel. But the good news is, of course, that we see a lot of industry consortiums, decarbonization centers working on green corridor projects to kind of make that happen and bring everybody together. That's critically important. I just got a question from the audience, and I'm not sure if any of you can answer it, but I will try my best. I will read it out. It says, what is your view on private equity investments reference a base minimum of 4 billion Swiss francs mezzanine structure twice a year on a specialized ESG shipping platform and a time horizon of 18 years. Does anybody know what this question pertains?
No.
Look, I can understand the question, and of course, there might be such investments or someone that would like to invest in a specialized platform, as they say. But the question is, when you go to do an actual investment, you need to have the solutions. And my comment is that, again, we go to the previous question that nothing is yet developed. And the second, when you have, and you need the technology to go ahead, because when the transition, let's say, from the cars was happening gradually, the car manufacturers have produced the new generation of cars. So you could buy a car. But now we're discussing among us a solution, but we need to have, let's say, the engine manufacturer and the shipyards that have to prepare the new generation vessel in which we can invest. And one point again is that, as I said, in terms of words, everybody is happy. Banks are, let's say, saying we are doing green financing, but without any substantial component. And also many industry players, charters, etc., are willing very easily to say, yes, we are first, but no one wants to invest. No one wants to pay. So this is a question, who pays at the end?
Okay, that's a very good question, and it's a pertinent question that always haunts shipping for a very, very long time. I would suggest, where does the money come from? Recognizing that we're getting close to the end of the webinar, I would like to give everybody a 30-second elevator pitch opportunity of where you see the challenges and how optimistic are you that we as shipping will pull through in the short, medium, and longer term. So perhaps from left to right on my screen, Michael, you go first. You're on mute, Michael.
Sorry, thank you, Douglas, thank you. I have seen different challenges. Technology is the number one for me when it comes to the new fuels. Investments needed is also a challenge that I think many people are aware and they try very much to address. But I would like to add something else. It is what I call the human factor. And the human factor is the competence of the people. When we talk for all these new fuels, carbon-free or carbon-reduced, and the challenges that we have, and I have the benefit of the experience we have in our group with the different types of vessels that we have, to burn a different type of fuel is very, very challenging for the people on board, and the safety concerns, etc. So I think we have to build competence, crew competence in a structural way to ensure the safety. When we talk for all these investments, for all these new fuels, for decarbonization or reduction of emissions in general by all different pollutants, we need to also do it safely. That's what I want to say. This is very important for all of us. And shall I say something else? Crewing is still the biggest challenge that we are facing since many years back. Thank you.
But overall, you're optimistic, right, Michael?
What I can say is that we managed to survive many different challenges. Recently, in the 2020, we had the very low sulfur fuels or the super low, ultra low. We didn't have any big problems for the transition. I am sure gradually with the years to come, 2030 will be a very important year. We will be able to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Sachi?
Thank you. I think firstly, don't wait for the perfect solution. So the point we made about LNG is that we took that leap of faith and we moved on. And in the macroeconomic world, not a single fuel can replace the big, comfortable, black liquid we've been serving the industry well. So we got to take that as a point. Two, there has to be an element of risk, and the risk cannot be sitting only in the ship owners' laps. I think all the industry, what we are hearing is that everyone is keen to address the climate crisis, and we have to come together, learn the new culture, how shipping is going to work. And I agree, infrastructure investment, port turnarounds, electrification are things that need to be addressed in tandem, constructively, together with improvements that has to be made on the ships and its operations. That's our call from here. Thank you.
You are on mute, Douglas.
Marco, maybe perhaps you can let us know how optimistic you are and what you see as the immediate milestones.
Look, I'm very optimistic because I'm a strong believer in human ingenuity and a capacity to adapt. So certainly I'm very optimistic. But like I said before, it's not the effort of one group. This is really a group effort. And every chain, the strength of a chain is determined by its weakest link. So either we all chip in together or it's going to be impossible to achieve. But I'm very optimistic we'll get there, but really has to be, everybody has to put his own common sense, and especially the financial cost is going to be enormous. So also that has to be really addressed very well, because you cannot rely just on one group of people that are the owners who are going to be just fronting all the costs of this transition. That will never work for anybody.
Thank you, Marco. Theo, next up.
I'm very optimistic about the future, except of a few challenges that are ahead of us. The main one, of course, is the future fuel. And if somebody could answer this question today, I'm quite sure that there would be an influx of new buildings orders in the market and eventually change the whole picture of the market. Of course, at that, the good market, as far as we are concerned right now, gives us hopes that we'll be able to survive in the near future. But moving forward, I'm quite sure that the CapEx investments are going to be tremendous in order to comply within the new regulations that I'm quite sure that they're coming. We haven't finished yet. This is a next tsunami is going to come after 4 or 5 years, after 2026, when results are going to be on the table. But shipping, as of course Michael said earlier on, survive over a harsh period of time with no particular, let's say, light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm quite sure we'll make it again.
Wonderful. And then Lucas, for you to final thoughts and let us know how optimistic you are before we close the webinar.
Thank you, Douglas, and for the nice coordination that you have already provided to us. I'm optimistic for the short period. I'm a little bit concerned for the longer period, because the shorter period looks more controllable. I mean, because we need to achieve certain things. In the longer period, in the medium and to longer period, we need to achieve more things. We need to have technology solutions. And I think one of the key important factors is whether the legislation will be stricter and will be implemented in a strict way, which will give push. But at the end of the day, technology has to give the end solution. Not right now we can do things, but after, let's say, 4 or 5 years from now, we cannot do many things. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas, and thank you to all the panelists. Certainly, I thought it was a very engaging discussion. I see that there's a lot of optimism in the room, that shipping is resilient, and we will be doing our best, or putting our best foot forward to support decarbonization trajectory in line with the Paris Accord. Final thoughts from me, and a resonating conclusion that I can draw out of this. This is not a single shipping challenge. This is a stakeholder challenge where everybody has a responsibility to play into it, whether or not you're a charterer, owner, financier, yard, fuel supplier, infrastructure provider. And I think if we continue that open dialogue and shaking hands with newfound friends, perhaps we will be able to get there and meet the IMO decarbonization stated goals and ambitions. So with that, I thank everybody listening and watching this webinar, and I hope you found it a very engaging session. I certainly did. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you from me as well, Douglas, for the expert moderation, and thank you to Michael, Captain Sachi, Marco, Theo, and Lucas for sharing your insight. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We thank
Thank you.
you. We thank you.
Take care.